Hello guys and welcome back to another live stream. I'm finishing up the Stanley Parable today. And last time they said I could pick whatever time. So, it's going to be 3 a.m. Ah, 3 a.m., your favorite time of day. Or could you simply not resist giving me the correct time again? After all, I know how much you enjoy setting the time correctly. Okay, now I'm curious how accurate 3 a.m. is. Let's use another slider to find out. How accurate is 3 a.m.? You know. Can I just say, regardless of the accuracy of the clock, I'm having a great time adjusting these settings. I feel like I'm learning more about you and how you like things to be set. It's all good. It's good to collect data. I wish we had more sliders, but we've gone through all the sliders I have. Perhaps I can invent some new sliders to gather new data on you. Shouldn't be too hard. Yeah, let me whip a couple new ones up. Should be ready by the next time you boot up the game. Now it says Stanley Parable 2 instead of Stanley Parable 1.
This is the story of a man named Stanley. Stanley worked...
Okay, hold on.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Bucket.
Then I'm gonna take the bucket and I'm gonna go the right way this
time.
time.
The bucket tightly to his chest, and still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd find answers. Coming to Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster fire, if not for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds of confusion and chaos. It would be with him, always. The bucket would. And he knew it. The two of them were inseparable. At this point, Stanley was so absorbed in the tender spiritual connection he shared with the bucket that he didn't notice the keypad behind the boss's desk. Nor in his bliss of simply being near the bucket did he have any notion that the PIN number for the keypad was 2845. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
I go this way. Down.
The elevator raced downward, plummeting towards an unknown fate. It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine.
That doesn't seem fine.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility.
Nope. I'm escaping.
Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket...
I'm gonna go here, I've got to.
The door behind them was not shut. Stanley and the bucket still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track.
Yeah.
At this point, Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking forward into a very painful death for each of them.
Where am I?
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's warmth and comfort had turned out to be. To be sure, it puts the mind and the soul at ease to embrace the bucket, but what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end, as it was crushed violently to death.
Stanley,
It was a shame, the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own way, but this one stood above the rest. It was a glorious bucket to behold.
The bucket welcomes you to the grand exhibit.
Can you see how arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that the bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be in his short life?
Okay, that's a little unnecessary.
No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one. It is man who should kneel before the bucket.
Why is... Oh, that's why. Give me the bucket.
But there is something we can do. Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong. Let Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another beautiful bucket. We can save the world's buckets from their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place as ruler.
This is not cool.
As commander of a new world, a new vision.
That's not cool. Shoot yourself. Now I'm gonna go to the mind control thing and see if that gets me anywhere.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. "Where are we going today?" the bucket asked. Stanley just smiled. Anywhere they went together would be perfectly fine with him. Stanley clasped the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left. Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd find answers. Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, but Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck. Was it the bucket knew all along? Was the bucket guiding him? Yes, this is certainly a
now I can go this way. Now I'm gonna go to the mind control place like I'm supposed to.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility.
Ooh. Oh, hello. That's my chat, bro. I forgot I was even live. What's up? Yo, what the?
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold?
What is happening?
Both wondered to themselves.
Hello? What do I do? Wasn't listening. I'll go this way. Press this, I
Monitors
guess.
jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs. The bucket had never seen anything like this, and it very nearly burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine. Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? It raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind.
Thanks for stopping by.
No! He screamed into the bucket. He
Yeah, I
couldn't
don't know.
accept it.
I've
His
seen like
own
2
life in
clips
someone
too.
else's control
This is like my
never.
first playthrough of the game.
Squeezed the bucket tighter. His one friend in the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except for the bucket. But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions.
Mind control status.
Or sad, or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place.
Facility
And as the
power.
cold
Do I
reality
go
of
that
his
way?
past began to sink in,
I think
Stanley
I do.
decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he and the
Mind
bucket
control
would
is idle
dismantle the controls for
awaiting
good.
input.
Two best friends, Stanley and the bucket, up against the world. They high-fived in a but at the last second, the bucket jumped in and pressed the button to turn on the controls. Stanley gasped in horror. Had this been the bucket's plan all along? To take over the machine and claim the power for itself?
I mean,
How
what?
could the bucket have betrayed him like this? Stanley was prepared to throw the bucket away in disgust when suddenly an image
fair.
appeared upon
Yeah.
the enormous screen.
That sounds nice.
Birds. Silly birds. The control buttons became active.
Silly birds.
Stanley flipped through one video of silly birds after another, and then it dawned on him. This wasn't a mind control facility at all.
Lamau.
It was a facility for monitoring
Bro,
and
your
surveilling
computer will
silly
take
birds
off.
all over the world. The mind controls were only a facade to disguise its true intentions. Had the bucket known this all along? Stanley marveled at the metal genius in his hands, the one who had pointed him towards this incredible discovery. Stanley and the bucket never found freedom because they spent the rest of their lives here in this place, flipping through live streams of the silliest birds imaginable. Of all the possible paths his life could have taken, this one was sure.
Ain't no way. That's wild.
Was happening.
Actually, bro. Shit's about to take off for real. What the fuck just happened? Alright, we're...
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting with a good bucket, a strong bucket, a humble bucket, a committed bucket, a bucket of culture and distinction. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left. Still no one was here. Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd find answers. Coming to a
I'm gonna go
staircase, Stanley and the
downstairs.
bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished. His boss would think he was crazy. And then, something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. He looked down at the bucket in his arms. Am I crazy? He asked the bucket. The bucket returned his gaze, but said nothing at all. That's strange, Stanley thought. Usually the bucket is a source of guidance and wisdom for me in difficult times such as these. He held the bucket close, he had felt none of its familiar reassurance and comfort. And that's when Stanley realized, this isn't my bucket. It's just a normal, everyday bucket. Someone else's bucket, perhaps. How did I end up with someone else's bucket? This is all terribly wrong. Surely no good would come from this. Who knows what sorts of bizarre hallucinations Stanley might experience without the psychologically grounding presence of his bucket. And indeed, now he noticed that the runes were repeating, which was, of course, very odd. And now he felt himself floating off the ground. Oh, gracious, he exclaimed. Without my bucket, I've gone truly mad. Where is it? I must find it. Far off in the distance now, he heard it, calling to him.
Stanley! Stanley, it's me! The bucket!
Could it truly be? He rushed forward from room to room, passing by one bucket after the next. None of them were his. None of them were his special bucket.
Come to me, Stanley! Find me!
He had to find the bucket. He had to return to his old friend. It was the only way to truly restore his sanity. And then suddenly, he froze dead in his tracks. He knew where the voice of the bucket had been coming from. The real bucket was inside of him all along. It was incredibly painful. Stanley doubled over in agony and blacked out. This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
Oh, this is different.
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, picked up her bucket of comfort and security, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town, talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. Right away, she knew what the problem was. This man had no bucket.
Ain't no way.
Ain't
no way, bro.
Describing all of his actions and how
the bucket's making me see stuff.
And free will is an illusion, and it's all just a video game. It could all have been prevented if only he'd taken his bucket with him. Perhaps he didn't even realize he'd forgotten his bucket at home in the first place. How cruel the world can be, Mariella thought, and she hugged her own bucket even tighter. But of course, she had no time for this. There were a myriad of confusing problems she would soon have to confront at work, for which her bucket would provide absolute guidance and total clarity on everything. Heck yes, she thought to herself, my life kicks ass. And she backflipped all the way to work.
Bro, really just backflipped like that? I don't think I'm taking a bucket this time.
What could it mean?
Screw the bucket.
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
I need to try one more thing with the bucket, actually.
A weathered companionship that stands the test of time. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Nah.
This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
Nah.
No,
said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Go. Good,
said the bucket.
now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do.
Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket had spoken to him, and he unthinkingly did whatever the bucket asked. No, stop. Look there on the wall. You see, there's a sign right there. It says, no buckets past this point. Stanley, how could you think it was okay to bring the bucket here? Unless, what if the problem is that you actually don't know what is a bucket and what isn't a bucket? I suppose that would explain a lot about your behavior up to this point. Which, if that's true, well, my goodness, I think we have to do something about it. This misunderstanding could have dire consequences on the entire rest of the game if not addressed quickly and properly. So much of the impact of the story is dependent on your understanding of what is and isn't a bucket. Please, step in here for a moment.
Is this a bucket?
Now then, I'm going to run you through some test scenarios, and you'll tell me whether or not the thing I'm showing you is a bucket. Simple enough, right? This should tell us
It's a
everything.
bucket, obviously.
Item 1. Is this a bucket?
No.
Correct. It is a hologram of a bucket, not an actual bucket. Item 2. Is this a bucket?
No.
Correct. It is a 3D printed recreation of a bucket, not an actual bucket. Item 3. Is this a bucket?
Yes.
Correct. This is a bucket. Item 4. Is this a bucket? Correct. This is a tractor and not a bucket. To be honest, I just sort of put this one in here as a gimme, but I was starting to get concerned that even this might be too much for you. Thank you for not making me look like an idiot. Okay, next one. Is this a bucket?
Yes, sir.
Correct. This is a bucket. Item 6. Is this a bucket? Trick question. Both. Gotcha. Item... Wait, hold on. I can't find the next one. Let me see. It should be around here somewhere. Yes. Thank you. There's nothing here. Of course it isn't a bucket. We both know full well nothing isn't a bucket. Wait, when I say nothing isn't a bucket, that makes it sound like I'm saying everything is a bucket, which of course is not true. Unless, is that what you think? Answer me straight, Stanley. Are you trying to tell me that you believe everything is a bucket?
Nah.
You know what? I'm too confused to even sort it out. I've lost all sense of perspective. What is a bucket? What isn't a bucket? Mere moments ago I could answer these questions with confidence. And yet now I'm somewhat adrift. Do any of us know what a bucket is? Am I a bucket? Stanley, I can't keep doing this. I'm losing myself, and myself was all I ever had to begin with. I'm afraid the bucket is threatening to tear our relationship apart. I can't have that. I'm sorry. But I'm going to erase all buckets from the game entirely. Okay, here we go. What happened? Is everything gone? Why did everything disappear? Wait, was everything a bucket? Every single thing in the game was a bucket. Oh my God, I have no idea. How could... Except me. I'm not a bucket after all. And you, Stanley, you're still here. You're not a bucket either. Oh, this is wonderful news. We're not buckets. Yes, I actually feel much more at ease right now. It's delightful to get some clarity on that issue, but it doesn't change the fact that we haven't got a game. So, tell you what, I'll reset everything and we'll put back all of the buckets.
What?
Okay? And we'll know that it's all a bucket. But if you run into anyone else, maybe don't mention that. Who knows what that information might do to a person. All right, here we go.
Hold on. What text did you... Bro. Crazy. Two watching now? What's up, new guy or girl? I don't know.
All of his co-workers were
Just
gone.
vibing.
What could it mean?
Where
Stanley
the
decided to
fuck
go
do
to
I
the
go?
meeting room. Perhaps the bucket made Stanley want to be a better man and a better co-worker. In time, perhaps, he would become both of those things. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest. This was not the correct way to the meeting room. But Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No,
Said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else.
I'm gonna go all the way up
Yes.
now.
Good.
Said the bucket.
Now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do.
Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket had spoken to him, and he unthinkingly did whatever the bucket asked.
In here.
Said the bucket.
Go into this dark room over here.
Stanley once again obeyed blindly.
Yep. Definitely not gonna get killed.
Now pick up the phone.
Said the bucket.
Pick up the phone and it will take us back home.
This is the sad story of a man named Stanley and his bucket. Once upon a time, I gave Stanley a bucket because I thought he was lonely and could use a
Okay, I've
friend.
already. Okay,
The
there we
meeting
go.
room.
I'm not gonna
Yes, that's
take
where
the
everyone
bucket
would
this
be.
time.
Stanley just needed to get to the meeting room,
'Cause
and
the
from then on,
bucket
he would never be alone
is
ever
ruining.
again. When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. The lounge was sublime.
I think I've done everything I can do with the
To
bucket.
get back to business, Stanley took the
So-
first open door on his left.
I'm gonna go this
Stanley was so
way.
bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Look, Stanley, I think perhaps we've gotten off on the wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really, I'm not. I realize that investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you... Really? I was in the middle of something. Do you have zero consideration for others? Are you that
Only you?
convinced that I want something bad to happen to you? Why?
Yeah.
I don't know how to convince you of this, but I really do want to help you, to show you something beautiful. Look, let me prove it. Let me prove that I'm on your side. Give me a chance. Now listen carefully, this is important. Stanley walked through the red door.
The red door. I'll listen this time.
Oh, thank God you are willing to listen to me. Do you see that I really have wanted you to be happy all this time? The problem is all these choices. The two of us always trying to get somewhere that isn't here. Running and running and running, just the way you're doing right now. Don't you see that it's killing us, Stanley? I wanted to stop. We would both be so much happier if we just stopped. And I think I have a solution. Here, let me show you.
Okay, so I have to go.
What do we want? What are we looking for?
Okay, this is new.
Here. Yes. Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? If we just stay right here, right in this moment with this place, Stanley, I think I feel happy. I actually feel happy.
No.
No, wait. Where are you going? Oh no! Stay away from those stairs. If you hurt yourself, if you die, the game will reset. We'll lose all of this. Please, no, Stanley, let me stay here. Don't take this from me. Please, Stanley. No! Oh, no, what are you doing, Stanley? Please,
Gotta keep
I'm
on
asking
doing
you
it,
not to take
Minecraft
this away
style.
from me. I can't go back to what I was before. If you die, we'll both go back. Why are you doing this? Stanley, let's go back to the other room. Can you... My God, is this really how much you dislike my game? That you'll throw yourself from this platform over and over to be rid of it? You were literally willing to kill yourself to keep me from being happy. Am I really... I guess that was too much to ask. It looks like you wanted to make
Probably
a
like
choice
one more
after
time.
all. Well, this one is yours. Is it over? It's going to restart, isn't it? I'm going back.
Okay.
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room to check on his co-workers. He never functioned well by himself and constantly needed support and guidance from others, so the thought of total solitude was terrifying to him. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, he entered the door on his left. Yet there was not a single person here either. Feeling a wave of disbelief,
My
Stanley
laptop.
decided to go up to his boss's office, hoping he might find an answer there. Coming to a staircase,
why-
Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Sure. I'll do the mind controls thing again, but without the buff.
Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Shocked, unraveled, Stanley wondered in disbelief who orchestrated this. What dark secret was being held from him? Stanley was in such a rush to get through the story as quickly as possible, he didn't even have a single minute to just let the narrator talk. That kind of anxiety isn't healthy, so he relaxed for a few moments with some calming New Age music. Feeling soothed and rejuvenated, Stanley calmly walked forward into the opened passageway.
Alright.
Stanley walked straight ahead through the large door that read Mind Control Facility. Hold, Stanley thought to himself. Did he have the strength to find out?
Okay.
Now the monitors jumped to life, their true nature revealed. Each bore the number of an employee in the building, Stanley's co-workers. The lives of so many individuals reduced to images on a screen, and Stanley, one of them.
Yeah, I have a Steam
eternally
account.
wanted in this place where
Do you like it?
meant nothing. This mind control
hold
facility,
on.
it was too horrible to believe it couldn't be true. Had Stanley really been under someone's control all this time? Was this the only reason he was happy with his boring job? That his emotions had been manipulated to accept it blindly?
I'm just loading up Steam so that I can give it to you.
He refused to believe it. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control? Never. It was unthinkable. Wasn't it? Was it even possible? Had he truly spent his entire life utterly blind to the world? But here was the proof, the heart of the operation.
Do you have like
Controls labeled with emotions.
Snap or anything that I can
Sad
text it
or
to you?
content.
'Cause
Walking,
I know it's like a
eating,
long
working, all of
thing.
it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would
What does this
never
do?
again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he
Aw,
would
damn.
dismantle the
Hold on.
controls once
I'll try to put it in the
and for
comments.
all.
Once it updates and opens. Off.
Blackness and a rising chill of uncertainty. Was it over? Yes! He had won! He had defeated the machine, unshackled himself from someone else's command. Freedom was mere moments away. And yet, even as the immense door slowly opened, Stanley reflected on how many puzzles still lay unsolved. Where had his co-workers gone? How had he been freed from the machine's grasp? What other mysteries did this strange building hold? But as sunlight streamed into the chamber, he realized none of this mattered to him, for it was not knowledge or even power that he had been seeking, but happiness. Perhaps his goal had not been to understand, but to let go. No longer would anyone tell him where to go, what to do, or how to feel.
Alright.
Whatever life he lives, it will be his. And that was all he needed to know. It was perhaps the only thing worth knowing. Stanley stepped through the open door.
Alright, I put my friend code in the comments. Okay. Alright. Accept. I accepted it. In theory, I have friended you now. Oh. Well, I friended you back.
Stanley felt the cool breeze upon his skin, the feeling of liberation, the immense possibility of the new path before him. This was exactly the way, right now, that things were meant to happen. And Stanley was happy.
Beat the game? Wait, I just beat the game? Wait. Okay then.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
Okay then, well, guess I'm gonna in the live stream since I beat the game. Well, see y'all in the next one.